What up, YouTubers, and welcome to our first ever episode of Battle Royale. In our first episode, we'll be looking at two top-notch horror series. First up,
Resident Evil.
Resident Evil saw its first release on the original PlayStation on March 22nd of 1996, and following the release spawned a whole new type of survival horror. From that release, the developers Capcom, as well as the creator of the series, Shinji Mikami, have made more than 20 different variations of the Resident Evil games, covering almost the entire spectrum of every home console and portable console to date, with their latest release being Resident Evil 3D Mercenaries on the Nintendo 3DS. The Resident Evil series went on to being a critical and commercial success. The series have sold a combined total of 45 million units as of March 2011, and the series was not only influential toward gaming, we also saw other iterations of the franchise in comic books, novels, and live-action and CG feature-length films. Now moving on to how well this series is perceived in journalistics' eyes, but also through the eyes of gamers themselves. Every major release in the Resident Evil series has scored over the combined total of an 80% out of a 100% scale. Now through the eyes of the gamers, we see quite a different story. There's a very defined line in what is being a classic Resident Evil fan versus being a newer fan of the series. The general population of classic Resident Evil fans find that the newer iterations of the series don't quite hold up to the horror aspect that Resident Evil created and improved upon over the years. For example, of Resident Evil 5 being classified as an action game rather than a survival horror game. Newer fans of the series, however, tend to lean more toward the newer, over-the-shoulder type action games, rather than the bare-bones, true survival horror iterations. Now moving on to our next contestant. Silent Hill. The first Silent Hill game was released January 31st, 1999, and again also was a commercial success. The game mostly takes place in the small town of Silent Hill, but also spans in the multiverse consisting of reality and two alternate dimensions whose form is based on the series' eponymous fictional American town. Now what the game focuses on is literal psychological horror, due to the protagonist being an everyday guy as opposed to a military-trained operative, such as in Resident Evil. Following the initial release of the original Silent Hill, developer Konami have made 7 additional installments to the series, Silent Hill Shattered Dimensions being the latest one. Now the horror that is faced in Silent Hill series is one of uniqueness that is hard to find in other horror games. The series always has you on the edge of your seat, messing with your head and throwing enemies in front of you that really catch you by surprise. For example, one of the dimensions is shrouded by fog, known as the Otherworld, which is obscured by darkness in a state of dilapidation with a particle lack of application of physical laws. Only the alternate dimensions are explored by the protagonist, which occasionally transitions between them. In Silent Hill Shattered Memories, it is set in a multiverse that consists of reality and a monster-filled icy alternate dimension known as Nightmare. Now Silent Hill also wasn't only influentially involved in just the gaming universe, but also saw a film adaptation in 2006, with a sequel planned called Silent Hill Revelation 3D, which is in post-production at the moment. We also saw comic books, novels, as well as many spin-off games to the series. If we take a look at how well the game was perceived, you'll see that the first 3 titles in the series were mostly critically acclaimed, with later installments being not as accepted. Now looking at how well the game is perceived in the eyes of the most important, the gamers, user reviews have stated that Silent Hill 2 was the most favorite amongst gamers alike, and Silent Hill 4 being the weakest contestant of the series. Now the big question is, which one is better? Which one is more scariest? Which one leaves you on the edge of your seat, scared out of your mind? Let me know in the comments below. You guys decide. And stay tuned for episode 2 of Battle Royale. Thank you.